everyone to the EUCannaJobs Potcast. We're thrilled to have you with us as we dive into the latest happenings in the European cannabis industry. I'm your host, Andy Mannsfeld, the founder of EUCannaJobs, an initiative dedicated to connecting European cannabis companies with passionate professionals looking to join the field. Today, we have an exciting guest, Heikki Aston, a seasoned cannabis networker and connector with years of experience in the industry. Thanks, Heikki, for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm enjoying myself, of course.
Great.
Talking about the topic that's most exciting for me. So
Yeah, I agree. For both of us, yeah.
exactly.
So, why don't we just start by having you tell me and kind of our audience how you got involved in the industry. I know you've been involved for a long time, but tell us a little bit about that.
I've been a grower and consumer for more than 20 years now, and I kind of just enjoy really the sector, the cannabis sector, the people that are in, because of the friendliness, the togetherness. And so I decided to try to do my part and try to kind of connect people in the sense of find where the passion lies at, and then maybe try to find them the position they're looking for.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it is a very interesting and exciting industry, especially in Europe right now, with everything that's going on, not just in Germany where there's a lot happening, but of course, all over Europe, there's movement everywhere. But you're in Estonia right now, correct?
Yes, at the moment I'm in Estonia, exactly.
What's going on up there with cannabis? I know the Baltic states aren't quite as far along as other places, but yeah, if you could give us some info on that.
To be honest, it's pretty sad down here because even the part of CBD is really kind of stigmatized, so people cannot advertise. There are problems usually because still kind of culturally it's not acceptable to consume cannabis because of all the history we had and all the brainwashing. So there are some stores who try to sell CBD and some oils, something edibles, and then maybe some flour. But to be honest, the quality is really bad, and should be better. Let's say like that. Should be better, but we're working towards it and waiting for the Germany to show us how it should be done, because Estonia likes to copy from other countries. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. For example, the law system in Estonia is basically German system.
Okay.
The German system, yeah. So we use it, and the same is going on with the politics at the moment. We need to see that anybody else has done something better, and then we can copy it and accept it, but not going to be the first ones to be like, okay, we're going to legalize. No, that's not going to happen here.
Okay. Do you think that could happen sometime soon, as in the next 3 to 5 years, or do you think it's more like 10 years? Like, how quick do you think that stigma and things like that could change, especially considering politics usually moves pretty slow with things like that?
I think with the politics, we have to wait until the last generation kind of leaves the job. So the younger ones can enter the politics because culturally, mostly, young ones already consume, even if it's illegal and it's stigmatized, but it's still kind of less alcohol and now more vaporizing or smoking because the outcome is better than consuming alcohol. So I think politics-wise, we have to wait until people change. Not their mind, but actually the new generation comes to work. And but in a sense of law, it's not even in discussion here.
Yeah.
And since they're already oppressing and repressing the CBD sellers, I think we're not even close.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Like you mentioned, though, a lot of the younger people are switching more to cannabis and away from alcohol, and that's something that's been reported on a lot from U.S. and Canada, that you're seeing a drop in alcohol sales, drop in the amount that per person is being drank, and a big not necessarily big, but a definite increase in cannabis. And people are kind of changing one for the other. A lot of it based on, like you said, kind of the outcomes, both in the way people feel during, the way people feel the next day, and then also just general perception of health. And also most studies show that it is healthier to be consuming cannabis for your body than it is to be drinking alcohol. So I think that's probably something we'll see, in Europe over the next few years too. But we'll have to see what happens.
The difference of consumption can be seen in the sense of, for example, if you go outside on the weekend and you see people drinking, there are usually some problems and fighting and aggressiveness, etc. So there are always police involved. But for example, when I was in Spain living, we went out on the weekend and we consumed a little bit cannabis, and it is usually laughs and food and friendliness, and it's completely other kind of vibe going around. So
Yeah,
that's the biggest difference, but you can actually feel either
yeah,
you're into alcohol or trying to consume something more healthier. For
yeah.
example, like yes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you mentioned Spain, so I know you're down there a lot also. What's happening down there with the laws? I know, for a while the government there was not very in favor of it, but I think things have been changing fairly recently, finally. Could you give us an update on that?
Yeah, sure. To my knowledge, as much as a researcher there, the system is mostly based on cannabis social clubs. So there are open social clubs where you have to become a member, so we can go and buy legally, so to say.
Hmm.
But the problem is there is no law regarding how it all is regulated and how you can buy, or how you can, for example, take it to your home without being searched and taken criminalized. For in that sense, there is a big cannabis culture in Spain, because by law they kind of say that the principal law, that they say that you can do whatever you want in your own private residence, so to say. So you can kind of grow in your home, but still, if police comes and sees it will be seized, and you will be taken to court. And the same is with cannabis clubs too. Actually, they have you pay the government the money, and you get the license to open a cannabis social club. But even with the license, still, when it's the police comes and raids your grow, for example, they still take away everything you have, and you have to go to courts and pay the fines. And later on, maybe you get back the license, even if everything was correct. But the penalization will happen anyway, even if you have the license and then the police comes and they don't care. The other thing in Spain is that every municipality is different. For example, it's really politically, how to say, oppressed, in the sense of sometimes they need to make a splash. I mean, politicians, so they kind of crack down on the cannabis social clubs. So the many raids, and etc. So you can see in the news, people, first ones who are raided, let know the other people, and they just close the club for the day, just to wait out until the storm passes, and they can
Yeah.
open up again, and then later we can read in the newspapers that, okay, we had a raid and so much cannabis and hashish we found. Actually, it's licensed. So there are many problems, and the biggest one is there is not enough regulations. So people don't understand what they can do or what they can't do. So imagine it as an investment, opening a club and buying everything you need for the club. For example, the computers and then the, I don't know, the internal design, etc. And you cannot make money in the sense of, and then provide the medicine for your members,
Yeah.
because there is no correct rules. You can't, there is nothing to follow. So it's more like, let's see how it happens and what court says, but it is a headache for everyone, and nobody wants to be stigmatized, thrown out of the club, or even searched, and it's not fun in that sense, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's very difficult. I mean that's what the Netherlands had for forever, was the coffee shops were allowed to basically legally sell, but they had
Mm.
no way to legally buy, and you couldn't legally grow. So it had to come from these cannabis elves or something in the middle of the night, you know.
Exactly.
So it's this bizarre system of semi-legal, but most of it's illegal. And how are people supposed to act? And yeah, it just causes a lot of problems, like you said. I
Mhm.
mean, that's one thing that at least Germany's trying to do correct now, is set up a regulatory system so these cannabis social clubs and home grows and everything are legal. There are rules that make sort of sense. At least you can follow them and understand what you're allowed to do. Some of it doesn't, like, you can grow 3 plants but only have 50 grams at home. Well, one plant should give you more than 100 grams if you're a half-assed grower.
Mhm.
So some of it doesn't add up, but at least you kind of understand, and there's some reasonable thought you can follow, even if some of the conclusions don't make sense. Or the cannabis social clubs are now, they're putting extra regulations on them, and they started on July 1st, but a lot of regulations really aren't even understood or in place yet. But they're trying to make it to where, if you follow these rules, then you will be legal, which is ideally what we want. And yeah, extremely frustrating when you have a situation like you're describing in Spain, where even when you do the correct thing, you still can get raided and get in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Of
that's
course, in
very difficult.
Spain, at least on the southern side, it's a big problem too, because the next neighbor is Morocco, and from Morocco, as we know, comes the best hash in
Mm-hmm.
Europe. So there is a lot of illegal trafficking going on, and on the Costa, the prices are so low that it's just crazy. It's easy to consume really good quality hashish, but the problem is the export to other countries and so on. So there is a lot of money involved in this situation. So they don't actually want it to be regulated, I think, because
Mm-hmm.
after that, all the money goes away from the black market,
Yeah,
and they pay too well for the system not to work.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Morocco is interesting because, they have legal cultivation there now also. And actually at Mary Jane and here in Berlin and at Cannabis in Barcelona, I talked to quite a few people who are from Morocco who were who supposedly had a legal cultivation organization, some of them their own, some of them were kind of conglomerations of multiple growers who were looking to be able to export their product into Europe. So they were looking for contacts or salespeople, various things. So that'll be interesting to watch. But like you said, right now there's not a lot of legal mechanisms to get into Spain with it. Even into Germany is not so easy from there. So a lot of sources, a lot of confusion all over the place still, unfortunately.
For me, it seems the countries are trying to keep the production inside, because it's a big source of money, a source of jobs. So it is actually smarter to have your own system in place than always relying on imports. Because if you
Yeah.
have a market that you need to provide services or products, it's smarter to actually have the production inside the country, the growing and the processing and selling, etc. Because it's an
Yeah, and
international.
that's what. Yeah, I mean, because of the international rules that that for recreational sales, that pretty much is what has to happen right now. But according to the EU and UN regulations, treaties, whatever they exactly are, you can export and import for medical reasons and research reasons. So that's what you're seeing over the last since 2017 when medical cannabis became legal in Germany. They've been doing tons of importing because the three companies that were eventually allowed to cultivate in Germany couldn't provide even I think 1% of what was needed in Germany. So it's always been importing, but for recreational, that's a whole different question. We don't have recreational here yet, but it's being looked at. And if that happens, how will that be supplied? Will it be considered research projects, which apparently that's the kind of the thinking now, in which case they can still import, but still, a lot of these gray zones and confusing workarounds that have to be done because of these antiquated um, regulations that people are trying to follow, even though half the people don't believe in them anymore. You know? Well, also I also noticed that you're actually have a background in law.
Yes.
Which I don't think I noticed or realized the first time we spoke a few weeks ago. How does that change kind of the way you view all this? I could see it being I could see your perspective being a little bit different with a law background, and I don't know if that's better, more frustrating, or you understand it better or not. I mean, do you think you see it different than other people, perhaps?
I think it just gave me a different kind of perspective to understand from the law side, because now I see how it's regulated and what they're trying to do with these regulations. But for me, it's hoax. It's a hoax because, for example, they I mean, all the community are using this kind of term like medicinal cannabis. For me, what is that? Cannabis is cannabis. That we put the additional word medicinal there, and that doesn't change anything. Same genetics, same everything basically the same, right? But for example, in regards to law, it's crazy how I can see that they're put in jail for the same. Are you having 10 grams of cocaine or are you having 10 grams of cannabis in your pocket? The law doesn't separate those. It's all drugs because it's on the list of drugs.
Right.
That just doesn't make any sense. And the last thing, that the most important for me, which I just doesn't understand, is why we cannot grow our own medicine. From what perspective is it okay or normal even to regulate that you cannot grow a plant in your home? I'm not talking about selling or giving to any other person. No. Just growing your own plant, putting the seeds into the soil and just having a plant at home.
Yeah, it's quite ridiculous.
It's your body, your autonomy. But legally, it's kind of the government comes and says what you can do with your body. That I don't understand.
I mean, if I can grow 20 plants at home, not legally, but if maybe I think the plant is pretty and I grow it.
Exactly, I do understand. Yeah, but the state can come and raid you, right, for that.
Yeah, but it's just a plant though that came from nature, wasn't changed. Corn is more changed, or almost all the fruits and vegetables we get are so much different, have been changed over time so dramatically to what we hope today now go and buy in a supermarket. Whereas, 1,000 years ago, tomatoes looked different, potatoes looked different, corn looked different, different colors, different shapes. Everything has been changed over time. But cannabis is more similar to what it was 5,000 years ago than any of these other plants, But in the end, it's just a plant. And, it's ridiculous that, like you said, someone's coming in and saying you can't grow a plant, if you're growing poppies and then you process that, or cocoa plants and then you go through a processing, turn it into a drug, not that I think anything should be made illegal, but there's a whole process there to make that actually a consumable drug. Although cocoa leaves you can just chew and it keeps you awake, I guess. But cannabis, you're not even changing it typically. You're just growing it. You can take the buds and you can fire them up if you want, or you can make hash or different, you can process it. But in the first instance, it's literally just a plant, that has flowers and has a smell and that's that,
That's why, in my opinion, is why it's hard to find the passionate people who are into this, because people don't want to talk about it. It's still stigmatized. It's unlawful. So how can you find the good workers for your project? For example, if you want to go, even if you are going hemp for seeds, in the sense of you're pressing oil afterwards, right?
Yeah.
There's nobody running around going proudly, okay, I'm growing cannabis and I'm providing the food and providing the oils and everything. It's just kind of still not acceptable.
Right. And, I think, especially here in Germany, that is starting to change. In the U.S., it has changed dramatically. It used to be a political divide in the U.S. where one party was for it partially, the other was totally against it. Now they're kind of all for it because they're all seeing money signs. But in Germany, you're seeing a change. And obviously with the law changes recently, there's maybe a slight backlash, but in general, I think we're going to continue here in Germany to see more and more acceptance. But certainly other places have a lot longer way to go. Like you mentioned, though, hemp and other products, the hemp companies don't want to be associated with cannabis companies, even though it's all the same plant, because of that stigma, which is also unfortunate because really hemp, CBD, cannabis, high THC cannabis should all be working together to advance the same cause, which is that this plant should be used as a commercial product or as a personal product, but shouldn't be outlawed due to antiquated notions. Yeah.
I had an interesting opportunity to oversee a situation where there was a market in Estonia, just an open market for all the, whatever the products they have making. So there was a market and a person came and asked, why are you selling drugs, from a person who was making bread with cannabis seeds, right? Because it's cannabis, right? and they actually called police for that. The ignorance sometimes is even crazier, all because of the marketing, how America did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you know what the police did when they showed up? Because most of the time the police won't understand what the difference is either, and will say, "Oh yeah, this is cannabis, this is illegal." Do you know what happened in that situation?
At this situation, they actually took the bread, and then for the person who was calling, just to calm them down. Okay, we take the bread and we go and make the analysis. So we're gonna make sure that there's nothing illegal inside. But it's still the situation when a farmer who grew this plant and made the bread, because it's actually very good fats in it because of those seeds, right?
Yeah.
And now he got stigmatized and kind of dragged out openly, like from the workers and from our colleagues and etc. It was not a nice experience for this
Yeah.
person, right? So it's even if you want to do something, it's hard to do because you're afraid maybe someone is going to just repackage everything for you, like say like you're doing something criminal, and for that the sector cannot grow because of the fear, the stigmatization or criminalization or whatever.
Yeah.
Just there's too much fear to start normally exist in this sector.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, I remember, you know, well, what else? Let me back up. I think the changing when laws change, it actually has a profound difference on a lot of people's perceptions. A lot of older people, they just say, well, it's bad because it's illegal, but they don't really think, well, why is it illegal, or should it be illegal? Is it really bad for people, or not? And I think my parents fell into that category. They used to always say bad, cannabis is bad, or marijuana in the U.S. is bad, bad, bad. Once it became legal, next thing you know, my parents are saying, "Oh, that might be something to look at investing in." Not that they wanted to, but just in general in conversations, uh, saying, "Oh, wow, that's a big industry. It might be something people can make money in." And all of a sudden, just because the law changed, it's no longer this horribly bad thing. It's not like they changed their mind instantly, but after a couple of years, they all of a sudden started thinking of it as a commodity and as an industry, and not as something that the devil has created to whatever do bad things to people. So I mean, there is hope that hopefully here in Germany and its laws throughout Europe and the world change, that a lot of these older people will also start to change their mind, kind of following the law. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like people should think through these things on their own and not just follow a law blindly. Slavery was legal at one point, doesn't mean it was right. Interracial marriage was not legal, doesn't mean it was right. So many things that were legal or illegal, depending on how you look at it in the past, were based on racism or many other things, and doesn't sometimes you have to look at these things from a more open point of view and figure out it doesn't make sense. And I think we're starting to see that more also from a lot of people who are used to be against changing the laws who are now in favor of changing laws. But we'll see. We'll see.
For me, it seems all about information because to actually understand what is cannabis or what are mushrooms, for example, right? You need to go and research yourself, right? You have to go and seek out the information to have an educated opinion about it, right? But since the government usually makes the law or even lets you know that it's not okay, so people, they just listen because okay, it's a government, they are smart, they usually know what's good for you, what is not. So it's easier when government tells you what to do and how to do than actually go yourself and try to research and try to understand. There has to be a motivation for that usually, and most people don't have it.
Right.
For some time ago, when you get sick, you wanted to understand what kind of plant you want to eat so you get better, right? Now, the only solution is go to the pharmacy.
Right.
It's easy. It's easy. You don't have to research. You don't have to know. You just go where they give you a solution and you live your life.
Right.
So
And
I see.
unfortunately,
Yes,
And
please.
unfortunately, pharmacists and doctors are some of the most conservative people, out there. I was a physician in the U.S., so I know it well. And yeah, they can be very conservative when it comes to cannabis. Also very conservative. Um, in general, the pharmacist lobbying groups here in Germany are very opposed to cannabis. I think that's going to change, but who knows how fast and in what way. Um, Also, many doctors are also opposed because they don't know it. They aren't trained in it, and during medical school, they are busy and they don't have the time or the desire to go learn all the information out there to figure out, is this something they should prescribe? If they are going to, how, for what? What are the rules? All that's gotten easier here in Germany, thankfully, with the change in laws as of April 1st. But it still takes a lot of self-education on the doctor's part to really understand it because, and it's easier now than it was 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, it was, how do we even prescribe it? How much? What do we tell patients? If the patient comes in and asks, well, what do I take and how do I take it? Most physicians were sitting there saying, I don't know. I know it can help with pain, but I really don't know what to tell you about how to take it. So there's that's getting better with the information that's out there. But certainly at the beginning, that was a big kind of hole within the education for the physicians. We just didn't know what to tell people, and we definitely don't want to tell people go smoke something because that's something that
Yeah,
generally most
exactly.
physicians are very opposed to, myself
I agree.
included.
I
You
agree.
know, so now even vaping, I understand vaping better now, but to me, vaping in the past was the same thing as smoking, just a different form. But it turns out it's actually a lot safer because you're not actually combusting the material. But
Hmm.
that was me having to do my own research to understand what is the difference, how does it work, and things like that. And then the dosing, and as a doctor, I didn't know. Do I tell someone smoke half a joint? I have no idea. And I wouldn't say smoke half a joint, as a doctor. In edibles, you can dose a little bit better, but still, as a physician, no clue about how many milligrams should be
Exactly.
in a edible and what to tell people. So, now there are guides out there that you can find online that help with that. But certainly at the beginning, that was a very big issue. So, like you said, education is very important for all sides involved. Yeah.
For me, I felt it firsthand too. When I started consuming cannabis, I started smoking as everyone else because there were no opportunities to actually vaporize correctly because no machines then.
Right.
In Germany, they are producing really good vaporizers, really good, one of the best, I would say. And for me, I felt the difference when I started vaporizing since I do a lot of sports. So when I smoked, I felt like I'm a grandmother. I can't run, for example, or do my kickboxing. Okay, and after
Mm-hmm.
vaporizing, it was okay. I can vaporize before my training and after my training. And actually, I ran my records completely vaporized, let's say like that. I ran 12 kilometers and I felt better than without consuming the same. So it kind of works with your body and it's natural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are certain terpenes and certain components of cannabis are definitely anti-inflammatory.
Mm.
So it's most, and who knows? We don't even understand what all the different components do 100%. There's more and more basic research being done on that. But just one example is anti-inflammatory. So yeah, if you're doing a long run, you can imagine that if it's decreasing that inflammation in your muscles, you're going to feel better afterwards, less sore,
Mm.
and 'cause that's what inflammation is, or soreness is inflammation. Yeah, so yeah, that definitely makes sense.
I think not enough science is made still because of it's illegal and it's hard to do the science part, to do the research. So we have more information because if without the information and without the science, we cannot demand this from doctors, right? Because they have to see the science to understand why it works, how it works, and it kind of helps them to protect their position when they prescribe this kind of medicine. Because at
Right.
the moment it's just like, okay, you can prescribe, but it's still like, why are you doing this? And it's easier to actually go and tell, okay, take this pill, and then they say, okay, you need this kind of form of medicine, like plant medicine.
Right.
But the problem, once again, is we cannot consume it since it's illegal. And even if it's legal, it is hard to get it because not everyone is a green thumb, not everyone can grow. So we need to buy it from somewhere. And,
Right.
and if it's unregulated correctly, so how the quality is and how we test for the quality, then we become in a situation like Spain is. They just sell everything because there's so many tourists that they're going to buy anything anyway. But the quality of the flower is subpar, I would say.
Yeah. And part of the issues, I mean, there is a lot of basic research going on, into the different components, whether it's terpenes and other cannabinoids in cannabis. But it's bringing all that information together. And in the end, I think it's actually too complicated for the human brain to figure out. Let's say there's 200 components in cannabis, but if this component is high and this one is low, then they might interact this way. But if they're both high, they might have a different effect on the body. If they're both low, it's once again a different effect. Or if this was high, this was low, once again a different effect. So it's not always 1 + 1 = 2. It might be 1 + 1 = 3, or in another time 1 + 1 = 4. And and then when you say there's hundreds of components and this one's high, which makes this one, when these two are higher but this one's low, then it's one effect. But if they're all high, so it's just so complicated the way they interact. That I don't know that. I would say definitely the human brain can't figure it out. That might be something that AI down the road can figure out because it's so complex. But that's also where taking cannabis and turning it into simple pills by taking out the THC and it's only THC or only CBD or CBG, it doesn't work because of all these, the entourage effect and all these things coming together. And it's not so easy that we just say, well, THC at this level, CBD at this level, and then add in this terpene, and you've got the perfect thing for whatever condition. Well, no, it's not. It's not much more complicated than that. So, that's where,
right? We're also different in the sense that there are men and women, and how old you are, how well you metabolize. Because there is a reason, I think, why we have an endocannabis system inside of us, right? We actually have the receptors to consume this plant and to feel the effects. So I think the nature answered for us, in my opinion, in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the plant's been around for thousands and for 5,000-10,000 years with people, so they kind of developed at the same time. Somehow there's some synergies there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Actually, that reminds me, the fact that the plant has been around so long, and Europe has the wonderful, novel food regulations, which says if something has not been consumed by people before regularly, then it's a novel food and needs to go through all kinds of testing before it can be approved. And they somehow decided that cannabis falls under novel food because it hasn't been consumed by people long enough, which you probably can't find any substance other than water and air that's been consumed longer by people consistently, It's just funny when you see the governments write these things down and the courts make these rulings. I don't know how people can write these things with a clear conscience. What's that?
You have to do something, right? The government has to do something. So even if it's not smart, they have to kind of regulate. But the funny part is that regulations are written by people who don't understand and who don't consume. So it's like saying it's bad, but if you ask, okay, have you actually tried or had the experience? No. So how do you know?
Right. But, I think they could have also just looked at evidence and said, well, people have been consuming this for 5,000-10,000 years, so we can't, with a straight face, call it novel food. So we're just going to say, yes, you can use CBD in edibles because it's not a novel food. You can use it without any additional rules and regulations. They could have made that ruling, but they didn't. They decided to go down the ludicrous route of saying it's too new.
Should be less regulations and more common sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything to be regulated. There is no need for that. We are human. We do understand what is good for us, what is not. If you consume something and you feel bad afterwards, you won't consume it anymore, right? Because nobody's going to do the self-harm. So that's how we choose the food, for example. You eat something, you feel nice, you don't eat this anymore.
Right.
You don't have to have a law for that to say, okay, you should not eat this. Let me try at least.
Right, right. And I mean, they're not applying novel food to corn syrup and all these other artificial, these semi-artificial. I mean, they're natural sweeteners, but they're being processed out of plants in a form that was never consumed by people until corn syrup's only been around for, I don't know, 30 years probably or something, maybe 50, I don't know, but it's relatively new to people. They weren't making sweet syrup out of corn 200 years ago. So, I mean, that should be more regulated, and it's arguably just as bad or worse for the body, considering it's high sugar, making people fatter and less healthy. Corn syrup is probably worse for your body than having an edible with cannabis in it. So.
That's where the insulin problems come from. At 50
Yeah.
years, as you said, right? 50 years. And already so much problems and so much damage is done, and it's still okay because it's economics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what it all comes down to is the economics and I don't think it's a lot of it's hidden under the guise of health, which I believe some people are looking at the health, but I think a lot of people are certainly swayed by who's putting money into the government and things like that. Yeah.
Of course, the lobbying.
Yep. Well, let me get back to what you do a little bit. So, you do a lot of networking and stuff. Tell me a little bit more about kind of that part of what you do.
Yeah, I really enjoy talking to people, meeting new people all around the world. So usually I work through LinkedIn, and when people try to connect with me because of my so-called work, it does not work for me because I don't make any money from it. I just do it because I enjoy it. I enjoy the people around it, and I really truly love to see passion. When I talk to people, I ask why, and usually they can tell me for 30 minutes like how they kind of get introduced to this plant, or why are they growing, why are they consuming, and so on. So I do enjoy this kind of part. And after some time, I kind of saw that my so-called Rolodex was so full of different kind of contacts, and I started hearing more and more that okay, I need this kind of people. I need a solution for this, like business or growing or even making concentrates or marketing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I know this kind of person, I know this person, I know this person. Maybe I can connect you.
Yep.
Because they don't know each other, right? But I have talked to both of you, so I know both those people, and I know what makes them passionate, and they're real in the sense that they're not chasing money only. That I don't stand. I don't want to help people just chasing money. That's not the point. We're trying to help our community, try to make it legal, so we can all have the possibility to grow, and the most important, to self-medicate if we need to. If it's our choice, it's our body, it's our choice. Yeah. So that's why I came to this kind of hobby of mine. I am talking to people and just trying to understand what makes them tick, what they are searching for, or as always, try to ask, how can I help you? If there is something I can help you with and you're passionate about this, of course, sure. And I will connect you. And if you can have some, additional value from that, that's fine for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help the community in the sense of just connecting the people who usually won't maybe talk to each other. So I'm kind of Mr. International in that sense. I talk to everyone from Spain, from Estonia, and with Russians, with Americans, with Canadians, whoever, as long as we speak plant in that sense. So that's what I like to do.
I mean, I think it's interesting what you said, that everyone has some kind of a story. And so what we do is we're connecting companies with people who are looking for jobs. And that's what a lot of people ask. Well, why do you need a cannabis industry specific jobs platform? Like, well, because I think it's important due to the stigma and just other reasons that companies find people who have some connection to the plant. It doesn't mean that the people need to use cannabis themselves, but they have a reason they want to be in the industry. And it might be that their grandmother had cancer and cannabis helped their grandmother with her nausea or pain or whatever, or maybe they themselves use it as a medication, or their dog uses it for anxiety. Who knows? It could be a million different, or more than a million different reasons out there. Every person has their own personal story. But I think it's important that people come in with some type of connection, because then they're in the industry and they're going to be working for that company with a slightly different perspective, that they want to be there Of course, it still work for them. They still need a paycheck, but it's a different attitude than when you get a job just because you gotta work so you can feed yourself, but you're not really into it. Um, we also hear a lot of times of stories of where people who have zero connection to the plant, they start working in the industry, and even though they have very negative opinions and perceptions, next thing you know, and I hear this story so often, it's amazing that it still happens, but these employees will sit there and basically be bad mouthing the people who are in the industry or who are clients or customers about these people being druggies or whatever else, which is bizarre to hear these stories. And I don't understand why those people are in the industry, but I hear it still on a regular basis that these instances come up, which, like I said, it's so bizarre. But that's why I think it's important that people who are in the industry have some connection. It doesn't have to be anything profound, but they have a reason why they think they'd like to work in the industry, other than I think I can make money. And it might just be that they're against prohibition or, like I said, millions of different reasons, but I think it's important.
For me personally, I saw a big wave of people entering in the sector just trying to make money. And that was sad for me. Why? Because they're trying to sell something without understanding it. And this is kind of not ethical, in my opinion, right? They just came in to make money, just trying to sell something because it's popular at the moment, but you don't understand what's the difference or why or how, or you haven't even taken the time to kind of understand the ABC. I'm not saying you have to be a fanatic about it, right? But just to understand the ABC, why it works, how it works, and for who it works. Not just like, okay, there is a CBD oil and I'm going to sell it only because it's popular at the moment. If you ask, okay, what actually is CBD? They didn't know the answer. So how can I actually help you? How can I help if you don't even understand what you're doing? So in that sense, I try to always filter people. I talk to everyone I can, but there is always a question about, are you actually serious about it or just trying to market something again? And then I'm going to do that. That's not in my interest.
Well, and there's obviously it's a new industry here in Europe, relatively new. I mean, Germany has been around 7 years now, so it's not that new. But the early years was quite small, and it's just really been picking up steam in the last few years here in Germany and in other parts of Europe. But it's a relatively new industry, still a relatively small industry. So that means there's not a lot of people in Europe who have a ton of experience working in the industry. So a lot of people who are coming in don't have cannabis industry experience, and that's fine. But people ask, what can I do? How can I get in? And I tell people, you just need to look at what you've done in the past and what's transferable. Sales is sales. It's a little bit different, perhaps. There's different regulations and things like that, but in the end, you're still doing a sales process with follow-up and building relationships and things like that. It's just a bit more interesting, and a lot of times I feel like the people are a bit more real because there's a better connection because of the shared interest in this product versus if you're selling mattresses, whatever, we all need a mattress, but no one's that excited typically about a mattress or something else. So I think for a lot of people, it's just what skills are transferable and what brings you into the industry, and it's one of those industries where having that little bit of personal story helps you connect with the other people in the industry and builds a small community, or a bigger and bigger community, which I think is a nice, fun part of the industry is that it is a community, which makes it a bit special.
In my experience, what I saw talking with people was that basically every country in Europe has the expertise and the people. Why I'm saying that is because even if there is no kind of legal market, right? It's not regulated in many countries, etc. But there is still underground, and there are people who are producing, who are transporting, who are marketing, and so on. So there is a lot of knowledge around. But it's just really hard to make those people talk about it because they cannot talk about it openly because they're so-called legacy growers, or for example, they have done it illegally, and it's not easy to say always, right? And how are you going to go to your employer and say like, okay, on CV maybe I don't look good, but I actually have 20 years of experience with the plant, day in, day out, with love and passion. And so it's hard to reach those, but they are there. But the more and more, the more there are actually the opportunities for work, they actually more and more come out and start to apply and start to kind of entering into this kind of legal market. And it's really
Yes.
beautiful to see, because there is a lot of passionate people whose voice cannot yet be heard, only because they're too afraid to speak.
Right. And what you saw a lot also in the U.S. Was that the legacy people were purposely excluded. If you know, it was like, well, if you have any convictions for cannabis, you can't join the cannabis industry. Yeah, you can't get a license if you've been convicted of a cannabis offense in the past and things like that. You know, which is quite backwards. You know, you want people with experience. You know, if someone was growing at home, maybe they're not perfect, or in a basement somewhere, maybe they're not the perfect grower for a 3,000 square meter state of the art facility, but you know, they still have experience, and maybe they come in as a junior grower, as an agronomist, and then they work their way up as they learn, you know, the complicated computer systems and all these things. But you know, just to exclude people because they did something when it was considered illegal is, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I think you're starting to see a shift. You definitely saw a shift in the U.S. I think you're already seeing that here, where companies are fine. At least some companies are fine looking at that type of experience. And I tell some people, they're like, well, I've got all this experience. I don't want to put it on my CV. I'm like, you know, you're not sending the CV to the government. You're sending it to an employer who's in the cannabis industry. So I think it's fine to add that history onto your CV and you know and put it in there and be proud of it. You know. But I agree. I wouldn't send it to the government position saying, you know, saying I used to do this illegally. Although what can they really do? But you don't want to tempt fate or tempt the authorities. So I agree with that. But sending it to a cannabis company, I don't really see an issue there. We'll see. It's up to each individual.
You need to do your research to see the companies, who they are all about, see their image, understand the social media, see how they're actually acting and understanding and seeing this kind of what's their attitude towards. And if you have done this kind of work, you already understand the company, then you can reach out. Just blindly sending CVs and hoping and praying for the best usually doesn't work, get you ignored. But if you do your research, understand that you actually would kind of belong in this kind of place, then yes, of course, should send a CV. But in regards to what you said about the younger ones who just start to grow, or maybe home growers, etc. For me, the most beautiful part about them is their passion, because they already in this, they already have the experience. So you don't have to kind of grow their passion. They already have it. They're just searching for an opportunity to maybe become this kind of bigger grower who can handle thousands and thousands plants. They just need a good start. They already had it in their home maybe, but now at least you have a person who is already there. Just start, giving them opportunities to him or to her.
Yeah, and hopefully we're going to see. Right now, there's not a lot of growing opportunities in Germany, for instance, but I think that's going to be changing in about a year. After the law changed April 1st, one of the big changes in that law was that previously only 3 companies could grow in Germany, and that is no longer the case. So you're probably going to see a lot more cultivation happening in Germany, although it's an expensive place to do it. But like we talked about earlier at the beginning, that gets you around these international prohibitions on exporting or export and import. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a lot more growing opportunities in Germany in the relatively near future. But it takes a while to design, then build, and get a facility license. So there's going to be a fairly long lag there. But hopefully we'll see a bit of a cultivation revolution almost here in Germany in a year or so, and with a lot of small companies coming in, which would be great for a lot of these people like you were saying, who have experience, but maybe not enough to be working for one of the big companies who already have their staff anyway. but will give opportunities to some of these younger, you know, legacy type people. Yeah.
I think still the best quality of products comes from the home grower, from the little ones, because if you go to the pharmacy or the pharmacy structures, yes, they have the flower, but if you look around with the reviews, etc., and then the passionate ones are the small growers, the home growers. And it can be seen, for example, I saw it in Spain. It was really, really well kind of developed in the sense of when there is good produce came to the club, right? It was always homegrown by someone, so because there always the passion is there, in comparison with maybe a grower who grows like 10,000 plants, right? You cannot attend to every plant the same. There is a lot of automatization, and it takes the kind of the art and the science and the soul out of the growing. And I think it actually matters how much you put your energy into the plant, because the outcome is completely different.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of that issue also is, for the medical cannabis rules are so strict. For Germany, for instance, when you register that plant, let's say you register a strain with a THC content of 20%, all future batches of that strain forever and ever in Germany have to be within 10% of that original plant, which naturally speaking would never happen. There will always be a drift. But
Exactly.
you're being forced to keep that almost exact THC content, so that forces an unnatural process, which doesn't add to the art of the plant. It adds to the science of that plant. That's where recreational later will hopefully if recreational can still come in the next year to Germany, recreational allows for all that. The artistry of different strains, and without having to be constrained by having to meet a certain THC level. Then it'll just hopefully be, you test the THC level and then you just put the correct level on the label. But each batch is going to be a different number, which is fine. But at least the other components and the overall makeup of that plant is good and interesting. So hopefully that will happen with recreational. And I agree, it's the smaller growers, what you have in the U.S. is the craft cannabis seed, which I think would happen here in Europe very fast, just because that's, I think, what people are kind of looking for. But we'll see. I mean, that's a big if right now. If we're going to get the recreational pilot project here in Germany before the end of the year. If it doesn't happen before the elections, then it's probably not going to for a while. But we'll see. Politics is very hard to predict.
Of course. I believe that not everything should be standardized in the sense of, as we said, if you need to have the same kind of part of the plant always, in genetical sense, right? It's going to be a senescence because you're making only clones and copies for the same, right? And it will lose the vigor with some time. This is the first problem. The second problem, every grower knows that if you grow a plant, that even from the same plant, if you take either from the lower part, upper part, or the mid part, the high or the effect, it's completely different, right? Because how much sun it gets, or light, whatever they use.
Right. So, which also makes the growing then have to be a completely different form, where basically you're trimming the plant in a way so that everything is pretty much the same. But once again, you're losing that variability, which is part of the beauty of a natural plant. So you're killing the artistry and the beauty of it in order to meet a medical standard, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I mean, I agree with people should know what they're getting, but why not say the THC content just needs to be accurate, within 10% or 5% or whatever. The label needs to be within 5% of what's actually in the bag.
Then it should be a range.
Yeah, it should be a range. So it'll be between 18 and 22%, and then because if that's the range in the plant anyway, and then the patient knows what they're getting and they can act accordingly. To me, that makes a lot more sense. Also, from a viability point of view for the industry, I mean, technically, you're supposed to be destroying your batches if they don't meet those criteria, which that's a lot of time and money lost. But I mean, also, each batch you're talking about 3 to 4 months for it to be ready to be put out onto the shelves, at least. And that's a lot of time lost to bring a product basically to market to then say you have to destroy it because of this arbitrary rule. Now, if it's full of pesticides or contaminants or mold,
Okay.
then I agree that that it should be destroyed. But that's not the case here. So, but I'm not sure who's at my door. But I mean, we're running up on an hour now anyway. So we'll let the dog and the doorbell be our bell to kind of wrap up. I mean, thank you very much for taking the time to talk today, Heikki.
I had fun. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the episode today. We hope everyone enjoyed the conversation, and feel free to reach out to Heikki on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me and EUCannaJobs on LinkedIn, of course, and be sure to visit our website, and you can take a look at jobs there, other opportunities and resources in the industry. And also, actually, we're going to post a few current jobs after this episode. So if you just want to hang on and watch for a minute or two, then you can see those. So until next time, I'm Andy Mannsfeld. Wishing you a great day ahead. Stay informed, stay connected, and keep exploring the world of cannabis. Thank you.
Bye.